So I thought I'd take this opportunity to talk about something that I find interesting, something that I like to always talk about, and that is training, programming, design, strength training, philosophy related to building strength and getting better at sports or just getting better in the realm of fitness, athletics, or whatever you want to call it. My biggest thing, and the thing I always think about is specificity. And me being a power lifter, or me being into deadlifting, squat, and bench, all I ever think about when I train, or at least not up until now, but maybe earlier before, I would think a lot more about how will this help my one repetition max? How will this help my one repetition max? And there's so many ways to view this idea. You can look at it as, okay, I'm doing lots of reps and sets to build muscle, to build myself an endurance base, to allow myself, or an endurance, I guess what you call it, conditioning base would probably be more appropriate, but conditioning, endurance base to allow you to do more reps and get more work done, improve work capacity, so that way you can do more work, inevitably allow yourself to train more frequent, more often, and ultimately allow yourself to practice more. Practice your sport more. In the case of the deadlift, get to practice the deadlift more. Having strong spinal erectors, having strong resilient lower back and core muscles will make it so that you can deadlift more weight more often and get more practice and ultimately getting better at the deadlift. Now when it comes to something else, something that's sort of an interest of mine, which is Olympic lifting, something I want to get into later in the future. I mess around with that. I'll do some cleans, I'll do some power cleans, I'll do some light snatches. And when I think about training and doing my powerlifting thing and trying to build my body to become stronger, one thing that I really like a lot is the overhead press. It's a really great exercise. It's a very difficult exercise. It strengthens your shoulders, it strengthens your triceps, and it's probably one of the more challenging exercises out there when it comes to strength. There's a good reason why people don't like it. It's also one of the most difficult exercises to make progress on. The main thing is that although overhead pressing, standard strict pressing, or even push pressing doesn't necessarily, or strict pressing doesn't necessarily relate directly to Olympic weightlifting, or I should say maybe the snatch. What it does, it teaches you to keep your hands over your head. Because that's one of the biggest challenges, is if all you do is specificity, too much specificity, like with the squat, bench, and deadlift, all those movements don't require you to have your hands above your head. So it makes it so that you are essentially training a range of motion that your body should be able to do. Inherently, what it does is that if you do only primarily the main lifts, what you're doing is you're robbing yourself from being strong in positions that you should be able to do. So although you might have a 400-pound bench, but you've been benching and not doing any overhead movement for a year or 6 months, there's a good chance when you'll be able to lift overhead some weight. You'll be pretty strong because you have a 400-pound bench, but there's a pretty good chance you'll get hurt because you don't have the stability and strength for it. Same thing for ass to grass squatting. If you've been squatting the parallel a lot, and then you all of a sudden start to just mess with Olympic lifting and start squatting all the way to the bottom ass to grass with heavy weight, this is a good chance you'll get hurt because you are strong enough to get down there, but you don't necessarily have the skill and joint integrity to maintain those positions. And the reason why I'm talking about this in the first place is because when I train clients, a lot of what I think about is kind of their goal and what they're trying to do. One client, what was her goal? Running. Okay, that's her goal, to run better. Because most people that I train, regular people, not powerlifters, not athletes, are just trying to get in shape and get stronger. And they usually don't have any athletic goal. But some of them have a desire to become a better runner. Maybe they want a better bench press. I try to gravitate them towards either the squat, bench, or deadlift and have progress in one thing, because at least they have something to kind of shoot towards, because weight loss, body composition is relatively slow. One lady wants to run. She wants to run better. So all I ever think about in her training is getting her body to be able to run better. That doesn't necessarily mean we run. We don't really run in our training sessions, but what we do, or what I do to train her, is to kind of see how her movement is, to make sure that she has good internal rotation in the hip, she has good extension at the hip, her hip flexors are loose enough to allow glute activation, that she's able to have a good core strength, good upright posture, good breathing pattern. That's actually a really big part for a lot of runners out there who are training for endurance, is that some people who hate running or have trouble with running, a lot of the biggest problems they have is they don't know how to breathe well. And this sort of relates to powerlifting in the sense that if you don't know how to breathe in your diaphragm really well, and you don't have strong posture, it makes it difficult to not only run and do other endurance stuff, but also makes it difficult to brace your abs and create a lot of air in your abdomen. So a lot of the time, you think about specificity, it's about the specific movement, trying to get better at the specific movement. And I've said it multiple times, the squat, bench, and deadlift, but think about the other things that are related to powerlifting that maybe you don't get a whole lot of practice in. And one of those things is bracing your abs. When I was driving in the car from SoCal, we were leaving for Disneyland. I was driving, and get bored listening to some audiobooks or YouTube videos as I drive, as I listen to these videos. And what I'm doing every minute or every 2 minutes is I'm bracing my abs. I'm taking a deep breath in, feeling my stomach, pressing my stomach out as if I had a belt, and then bracing, and then exhaling. This allows me to practice bracing my abs. It's kind of crazy, kind of weird, but if you're trying to get good at something, you got to practice it. And sometimes, let's just hypothetically say you do 3 sets of 3 on squat, bench, deadlift for working sets, that's basically only 9 reps per exercise that you're practicing bracing. And if you don't do that, you're going to obviously mess up, or you're going to leave a lot of potential on the table. Keep wanting to go on tangents and kind of I'm trying to stay on topic as much as I can, is that when you're training and you have other goals in mind, maybe outside of powerlifting, outside of the big 3, think about kind of what movement will improve what it is that you may need more work on in the future. As I've mentioned in other videos, I talked about my elbows or my knees bothering me. How do you make it so that your elbows and knees don't bother you so that you can support your system? One of my things in my head, like when I bench a lot, every time I bench, I have a solid bench session, I do a shitload of rear delts. I do a lot of banded rear delts. I do a lot of external rotation. I stretch my rotator cuff to make sure I have good internal rotation. And the reason why I do this is because I love bench press. And I know that if I don't take care of my rear delts and my upper back, I'm going to have shoulder problems, because that's happened to me in the past. So it's kind of like taking that next step, or kind of planning ahead and prehabbing. So think about other goals that you might have. Maybe you want to... I just like Olympic lifting because it's just, again, Olympic lifting and powerlifting gravitates towards what I like because it's just like a single perfect rep. That's what you're trying to do. There's sort of a magic art form in that. But anyways, my point is that think about what you want, right? And think about kind of what things will make other things better. That way you kill multiple birds in one stone. For some people, for guys, for example, I guess anyone for that matter, wants nice arms, right? How do you get nice arms? Well, you got to work your arms. It's pretty simple, right? If you want nice shoulders, I'm a big believer that lateral raises and rear delts allow you to have a really good shape in your shoulder. Most of the time you do overhead presses or you do bench pressing, you're getting a lot of front delt work. There's not a whole lot that you need to do. Front raises just seem like a waste or unnecessary if you just bench a lot or do a lot of overhead presses. And then for deadlifts, trying to be, like I said before, having a resilient lower back. But more importantly, allowing you to make sure that you have good hip extension. So that means stretching your hip flexors, taking the time to stretch your hip flexors. So one thing that kind of helps if you do lunges, one thing that happens is when you're in the lunge position, the leg that's behind you stretches the hip flexor and allows that glute to activate. So you can activate that back glute, even though you're working mainly the front leg when you're lunging, you will activate the back glute into extension so that the hip flexors can stretch to help improve your pelvic mechanics, or pelvis, your lumbopelvic hip complex movement. So anyways, that's my little talk. Hope you enjoyed it. Add to the discussion if you like. Leave a comment below, and I'll see you guys on the next video.